probably drive by there. My sister, so.
Supposed to start 100% chance of snow.
In your neck of the woods?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
At 5 a.m.
How was it when
Is
you
your
left?
husband hunting right now?
No, he's just a guitar. I mean, well, I shouldn't say just. He's a guitar player.
Oh, I know.
He just doesn't. He doesn't. But I made him. I was talking with the kids and I said, "Oh, he just go shoot it out of really." And then I cut it up. I said, "Oh, one of my students heard it." And so then she said, "I'll get you here." Oh, good. So the next day, she pulls up. She says, "We're off. We got you here." I said, "Really?" She said, "A big deer." She went out.
Big
Oh my God!
That's the best right there.
How awesome!
So I brought it up. It's on that radio. Billy
Are we still set for the
himself.
ninth, you know?
So I brought it to
Train for the
them.
ninth?
Got it.
Process?
Oh,
Processed.
wow.
Filled the whole freezer.
That's awesome for
You should
you.
have brought Sam some.
I was gonna have a
Yeah.
workshop. Yeah, did you see us all?
Luckily, it was Saturday.
Yeah.
My first question was, it's going to be chicks.
So yeah, that was a good,
It's in school.
good one.
Yeah. So I'll see how next point meeting.
We're expecting podcast yet?
Janine, come and surprise
I
me.
know.
Surprise people.
Calendar.
I know. We gotta come down that.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we start?
Yes.
We are. Okay, ready. We're going to go ahead and get started, obviously. And what we need to do, just to start things off this afternoon, is just go around and introduce ourselves again. We do have some new folks that are with us today, and maybe they can share a little bit with you as to why it is they are here. And then after we do the introductions, I'll give you a quick rundown of the agendas and the changes we've made. We want to certainly provide you with a great deal of information today, but we're going to do it hopefully in a succinct and useful manner. Hopefully we do that all the time, but we don't want you in a snowstorm, so we'll get done everything we need to get done today, and then
Get you out of here.
get home safe and sound. So thank you again, all of you, for taking the time, carving this out of your busy work schedules, which we know you all have. We appreciate the commitment that you have, to this meeting and to this time. So Sam, I'm going to start with you. If you just introduce yourself again, who you are.
Okay, Sam Bruner, principal and prior. Is that it?
Jim Dakota, Superintendent Fraser.
No, that's it, Principal Fraser.
Karina Garvey Hall, Assistant Superintendent, Principal in Harvey.
Sherry House School Board Chair.
Board Chair.
Lost Resident District.
I'm Stevie Schmitz.
Joe Slade.
Nancy Cran.
Marcy Cobell-Gilbert, and I'm the former principal at Reindeer.
Tom Peck, Superintendent at Box Elder.
Karen, Superintendent Chinook, former Superintendent.
Special thanks to Marcy and Darren for being with us. And I welcome you, Nancy.
I'm Nancy Coleman.
And we appreciate your continued engagement as you work towards certification for turn on school leader. We welcome you to participate in our event, and we're glad that you could be here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you very much.
You'll think at the end when you have
Yeah, there was homework for this meeting, and now there's homework when you carry on.
Yeah.
All right, so to start off today, we're going to have John Wetzel. We've been on the conversation of just looking at data-driven decision-making. How do we use that in our schools, especially when we find ourselves data-rich and sometimes information-poor, oftentimes spinning in circles. So John very graciously agreed to share some ideas that they use with MAPS data in the Fraser District, and hopefully there'll be some takeaways there, as well as add to the conversation things that you've done, things that you've tried, in addition to what John's going to share with us. We've asked Karina to talk a little bit more about the eligibility policy that she talked to us a little bit about last time, with kids being involved in sports, and how that came to be, maybe a little bit more framework to it, Karina, about if they wanted to replicate something like that, how would you suggest they go about it? We were hoping to have some folks here from Hayes Lodgepole today, but Governor Bullock is in their district, so that's where they are. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some articles that we felt were timely in this conversation, that we thought we would engage in a brief conversation about that. We keep coming back to this whole topic of student attendance, and Sam reminds us frequently that this is really just a pivotal issue in our schools, in all schools really. It's not just a high needs conversation, high needs school conversation. It's a top conversation right now across the country. And so we have some ideas and suggestions that we want to bring forward for our meeting in December, and some ideas that we think would be helpful for you all. We do want to talk about the Mid-Summit that we have planned for you. We are going to look at the 9th and 10th in Billings. Hopefully that dovetails with the Indian Classic at the Metro, so that hopefully that will save some of you some extended travel. We want to talk a little bit about board training. Stevie wants to do an update with that, and we want to make sure that we've got either people scheduled and slated for training, or hear from you about specific needs for training. We had some ideas too, Darren, for you in part of this conversation, so hopefully that'll help you. We also want to talk a little bit about the high leverage indicators, which are, those are the 5 that we're focusing on this year, so we'll spend a little bit of time with that today. And then just a leader member update. You had done your membership request, and so we'll just do an update with that. Some of that we might be able to do just in email as well. So with that, John, I'm going to have you go ahead and lead us off. And as I said, we just really value your sharing, your ideas, your thoughts, and learning from each other. We don't profess to be the talking heads. We hope that you're doing more talking than we are. And so John has graciously agreed to do this, but in really an informal way. And so hopefully you ask questions of him, and certainly offer your insights as well based on your work with this tool. So with that, John, I'm going to let you have the floor.
Thank you. I guess the first part is, how many of you guys actually use maps? Do you guys know if you're on the web-based or the server-based? And I would highly recommend that you switch to the web-based. I spent probably the past 5 years duking it out with our IT people to get reports submitted, just different things. And this has alleviated all that. It's taken out the middleman. And it's also put a lot more data into our teachers' hands. It's made them more accountable for, even especially in the testing process. If you're familiar with the way the Smarter Balance exam works, very similar. It has its own browser, so the kids can only be in one spot, and then the teacher actually monitors the progress. And I don't know if I can kind of...
John, can I just interrupt you 1 second here? I said I wasn't going to be talking yet. Raise your hands again. Do all of you use maps prior? Okay, everybody?
We're starting in January.
Okay. Is that on the radar at all, or is just
We
something
mostly
similar?
use iReady and StarMap.
Okay.
At the high school we use StarMap, but now we're pretty much going to iReady.
Okay. So would be part of this conversation be helpful then to say, why should we use maps, and does it help us? I don't know. I'm just asking a question.
And really, I'm not. We have Ames Web data. We have iStation. Well, we're getting iStation data. We have it, but we haven't used it to fidelity. So really, it's whatever you prefer. This just tends to kind of be my wheelhouse. It was kind of given to me, and I just took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
I'm not a promoter of maps. I don't. Ames Web has its potential. It's just if you use it to fidelity, and I think that's the case with any of it. Just being able to take it and apply it with your students is really what it comes down to. So I'm not going to say one's better than the other. I see the potential in Ames Web, but our teachers weren't willing to do the progress monitoring piece.
But I think what we'll see from you, and maybe hear from the others, is the value that this tool has.
Yeah, it's all about application, and I'll get into that. I'm just kind of getting into just the basic logistics. Like right now, this is how you would create a testing environment. And like I said, anybody with the Smarter Balance or experience with that, it's exactly the same. It comes up with the section ID, different things that the students enter in. And it's nice because you can hone in on specifically what test you want them to take. This is from the teacher perspective. I don't know if I can create one without actually, kind of getting into our testing.
John, do you know what it costs for maps?
Was it 5,000? Anybody? I really don't know.
I can't remember. It's a yearly subscription
Yeah.
Based on per student?
per student. Yeah.
That's from
But I would also echo what John's saying, that the web-based is so much easier. I've lost less hair this year because of it.
Really?
Yeah, this is actually what the testing environment looks like. And like I said, once they log on, you can monitor their progress. You can see where they're at. You know, if you got a kid that's on question 41 and the rest are on 10, you know something funny's going on. I can show you the lockdown browser. We did notice that when we first got this installed, you kind of want to have this ready to go. Otherwise, sometimes it freezes on this white screen on the first initial logins. So this is kind of something you want to make sure is ready before you do it. Kind of like with the Smarter Balance, the same thing. I mean, we kind of noticed some crashes at first, but it's a lot smoother. And so then, like I said, you take your session name, your password, and it really eliminates a lot of the errors. You've taken the right test. There are still some, it's a different layout than the server base, because the other one has with goals, common core, where the names are a lot simpler on here. And so this is kind of what the actual testing environment looks like. And now, the nice part that I like is on the left here, is that the teachers have access to this. This is the reports here. And just the different ones that you can look at. And before you had to wait up to 24 hours to get the results back, you can create these right away. I kind of already went ahead and did some. And see, this is basically a report of our students as a whole. If you look, we haven't tested our science yet here at the bottom, but that's because we have a kind of an elderly guy doing our science, so I'm kind of got to get him caught up. But we have everybody in there placed by their strands. What I really like about this is that you can kind of get in depth with the online version of this report. See, so now see you have the different strands for math. I don't know if you guys can read that on the left, but this is the breakdowns of each department now.
Oh, yeah.
And now see how their names are in blue. So I have my student Wesley Weston here. You know, okay, he's in this strand. What does this mean then? What does this score range mean? And see, now we can get into the real logistics here of operations and algebraic thinking, expressions and equations. And we can see exactly where Wesley lies. So they're saying these are the things that he understands. You know, and if we want to look at the next strand, okay, this is where we want to get Wesley to. You know, I mean, this is pretty slick. This is getting closer to where the rubber meets the road. It doesn't tell you specifically what they need, but we're getting close to where we can modify his instruction specifically.
So John, who sees this information?
The teachers have access to this.
And do you see any value, or do you ever give a similar report to parents?
We could. That's a big piece that I noticed missing. We would do all this. We would even place kids in intervention, but the contact home wasn't taking place. And when I step back and think about it, it's like, duh, we're missing a big piece there. Like they see the report card, and they see reading intervention or corrected reading. But then again, why? The parents didn't really say anything either. So we were just kind of going through this process. And like I said, this really kind of gets to the point where you can start breaking down. Okay, where does this kid lie? What can we do? The next piece that we've been looking at is how do we determine where a kid's at? Yeah, they give you a proficiency score, but how far off can they be before you start looking at, okay, is this kid gifted and talented, or does this kid need an intervention? And this just kind of comes from the norm data here. And if you look, it gives you a standard deviation. And it's kind of a friendlier look at your data than just looking at the mean score of where they should be at in the left column there. Like say for reading here, math, in here. So then with that standard deviation, you can go out that many points off each one and then kind of determine, instead of just having that one number, if you think, oh, well, there are 4 points off that, you don't know if that's close or if that's far. Where this gives you a better picture of what's normal for your kids. And see, when we place our kids here, our data actually looks okay. We still have some improvements to do, but we know we're not that far off. We're still within one standard deviation. So that kind of helps us place our kids in the terms of like an RTI model, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
So I want to go back to Stevie's question. So Sam and Darren and Claudia Lors from Lodgegrass, do you know all these people?
Yep, pretty much.
Zach from Mark Selden, and Hannah from Chinook.
Okay.
And Claudia Wars is from Lodgegrass, and you know everybody else? Okay. So, and Claudia just indicated that Lodgegrass also uses MAPS data. So Steve's question about when you were going through the RIT score range and sending those reports out to parents, and that maybe you're not doing that at this point, is anybody doing that? You are.
We do those at parent-teacher conferences.
And so what's the reaction to that?
You know, it's pretty good. I would say it's pretty good. The one thing that coming into Chinook is different is we also use this data to do our Title I program. So we replace certain things with Title I programs during the school day and after. We find parent-teacher conferences go real well with this. Where we have a little more issue is when we send letters home as far as our Title I students, send a letter home saying your student may qualify. Please get a hold of us and let's visit about it. We find it harder in that aspect.
Is it the difference of face-to-face versus sending it out?
It's the difference of community value. They see Title I as being a negative issue instead of being a positive where we can fix things. And for us, using this kind of data now for these kids, is we're pretty fortunate right now. Our student body president and our quarterback of our football team are both former Title I students that still visit Title I program, just not our official members. We're going to try to use that to get back to scores and show people, hey, we use this at this point in time with these folks, and we intervene with them and got them to help them to that point to move forward. But as far as a parent going through the system too, I love seeing the map data. When you show up at parent-teacher conferences, you go through it. Your kid does this, and then first one you kind of get the baseline, and then spring parent-teacher conference you get it and say, hey, look where they're coming. They're still not here, but this is what we're doing.
So what about board members? How do you share this information, or do you?
And I give it to them, but I found kind of like where it agrees from there. It's better off with the percentile data when it comes to introducing it to people not familiar to the MAPS process. Otherwise, a RIT score, like I said, you can't tell if a 4-point growth is good or bad. I mean, you can't tell if a 212 where that lies. I mean, yeah, you can compare it to a proficiency score, but it's still kind of vague. Where I've gotten a better response from the general public with percentiles. My very first data wall, I did this big elaborate data wall that had everything out presented to the public, but it had RIT scores on it, and I had people ask me what does that mean. So I fell short that way. And so I've learned kind of with general public, without having to get into depth explaining your MAPS process and what things mean, it's the percentiles help out a lot more. They get it. Especially when you start comparing that to national data or then your own district data. There's a report on here that you can see your students' growth now. I thought I might have screwed up because I just kind of started clicking buttons to get us into the web-based map. I was clicking yes to all the survey stuff. But it still kept all our data. Now we can actually track, I think, back to 2012, 2013. And you see how the student growth. And then here, this report here, this is off the NORMS data. This is just scrolling down from that other one I just showed you guys. But this is what their expected growth is. I don't fully understand the standard deviation for this because if you look, I don't know, I'm not a mathematician here. But I can tell that that's their expected growth from beginning to mid. So it's 0.6. If you notice, it gets smaller and smaller as they get older. Their expected growth. And that's you start to notice. I mean, I truly believe I had 2 kids that topped out their potential in the test. The one kid memorized all the questions. He was a senior last year, he's our valedictorian, and that's what he finally came to me, he's like, hey, one of the questions changed. And this is a 54 question test.
How often do you progress monitor?
With this, it depends on, I'll say 2 weeks to do it for like your tier 3, tier 2 once a month. Tier 1 we leave alone, just until the next benchmark, is my philosophy on it. Progress monitoring, we just do the surveys. Throw them a survey real quick. It's like 20 questions, 25 questions instead of the full-blown MAPS test. And it gives you a projected, and Jim thinks that they're pretty close. He's done it the most.
Well, the surveys tended to be higher than the full-blown test.
We actually broke down the full-blown MAPS test just because we found that our kids stopped taking the last 20 questions seriously because they were getting bored. Jim started dividing it up, and then it started to mirror more what the survey was telling us.
The surveys the survey score would be up here, but the full-blown test scores were down here. And what I did is the 54 questions, I broke them in half, about 26.
Yeah.
After 26, pause, you finish it up tomorrow, and I found that the scores evened out.
Yeah.
So the survey scores were more accurate than
Yeah.
the full-blown test.
Yeah, if you
As
notice
far
a
as the
half
risk
hour
scores,
on the first 30 questions and then 10 minutes on the last 25, you know.
I agree. I mean, I think it's also how you test that affects, you know, if you do it in the morning versus the afternoon, or, you know, if you go in shorter increments like that. I don't think we should be testing kids any more than 2 hours anyway. So, because they get tired or they get,
Yeah.
They do.
and then they don't care. So.
What about going over this with students, John?
And we have set goals. They know their RIT scores, and see, they understand it more. And so then they set goals. Or we have in the past a lot, like on the actual RIT score. Okay, this is what your expectations are. This is, you know, we've even put it in the terms of this is what will get you out of an intervention. See, the one thing I don't like is that a tier 2 intervention should be short term. I mean, it should hit that specific skill, and then you should be out. Where we've done, okay, you're in here for a semester. And we've used corrective reading, and I don't like that because you kind of stumble upon what the goals are if you do it right. If you don't, you can breeze over what their actual skill set that they're missing. You know, so that's...
So the detailed report is helpful in that way as well for instruction, correct?
Yep. And as I said, that starts to get closer to where the rubber meets the road. No matter what data you're using, that's what it really comes to, is down to the instruction that we're having with this kid. How are we modifying that? And that kind of gets complex when you have a class of 20 kids. You know, how do I do that for each specific one? You know, that's the real question here. Everybody makes such a big deal out of data, but it still comes back to instruction. You
So
know,
we're going to tie this in with Ed Ready. Is anybody using Ed Ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, how's it work? We're going to try it out this year.
We're just getting into it too. I really like it though. I mean, from what I've seen.
Can you explain it? What is it?
It's a math, it's a math, or it's like a digital academy thing for students. It's focused just on math, something you can tailor to meet the students' needs.
Right. It's
The research
it
is
breaks
really
it down into
and
like
it shows that it's
specific
good
concepts that kids
Right.
can do, and then it tries to like focus your instruction and your practice on those specific weaknesses.
So,
How do you find those weaknesses? Is there an assessment that goes along with it?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
so John, I know you're going to address this, but I guess, and you all may be in different parts of implementation or different phases of implementation, but just listening to you thus far, it sounds like your teachers, one, have bought into the idea of maps, that they're using maps. It's not
Yeah.
just
Well,
So-
like I said,
so-
the big thing with the server-based was accessing the data. I mean, there was such a wait, you know, certain reports took longer, you know, it all depended on if it was uploaded from your server. I mean, there was just all the sequential steps you had to take that just frustrated me.
So as you read into what you're going to share with us, talk about how your district got the buy-in from the teachers. How do you get them to actually use it with fidelity? How did you reach that point? You know, because right now Tom doesn't have something like this, but maybe he could use some tips. I don't want to speak for you, but I could use some tips on how do we get teachers invested into this process.
And further, as a leader, how do you monitor the fidelity or
Right.
what do you get out of the system that tells you teachers are indeed accessing the scores, looking at the information?
See, actually, I guess the initial buy-in, I mean, I have a couple of elementary staff who really kind of took things by the reins. I mean, our high school staff didn't really fight. They were, okay, you know, okay, we'll do this. But it was the elementary, because, I mean, because of the SIG grant, we've had so many different types of assessments. Yeah, they didn't know which one was right. So finally, last year, I started sitting down and said, let's pick one and focus on it, because otherwise we're doing all these ones halfway, and we're not getting anything out of it. And there were some that didn't have the buy-in, but they didn't say anything, so they didn't say either way. So the one that said, yes, let's do it this way. And so then they had no choice but to test their students this way. I didn't provide them any other option, I guess.
So Sam or Claudia, do you have any, how did you guys get staff to commit or buy in?
It's a good question. I would say right now it's easier for me to get buy-in from the elementary, although it depends on the strength and the ability to access the information with technology.
Yeah.
If I print it off, it's still just going to be, well, here's this pile of stuff that I have in this folder, and then accessing it continually, I would say being proficient at technology is the biggest barrier to accessing this stuff for my staff. And I don't know why that is, but that's the case.
That's the
Yeah.
stalemate.
And then at the high school, I think it is, we're adding that, but for whatever reason, to focus on that, a literacy initiative, their gerbils can't handle and I don't want to say it negatively towards them, some of them can handle that,
Yeah.
some of them can handle the technology, but to throw two competing ideas in there that I'm going to look at this score when they don't even know what a RIT score is, there'll be times where I was asking if I could take a mental health day because I had a teacher, I can't log on. Well, she'd been married the previous summer, and I had her email changed, but she didn't change her email in her mind. So she was using her maiden name still, and or I go and I help check out, why is this teacher not able to access it, and just stressing me to high heaven. Caps lock's been on, or numlock's not on, and so somehow they're arrowing somewhere over and they just can't. So that's the biggest thing for me, is just for whatever reason they don't really.
So do they, if they can get over those technology hurdles, do they see the value in what you're trying to have them use?
They do. So I have a couple teachers that are using this. They're, for the elementary, we do AimsWeb, mainly because my elementary kids can't read. I don't have any elementary kids that are third grade and below, they can't read. I have third graders that don't know their letters still. So the AimsWeb tests work out great because they're all verbally prompted. So that I have teachers down there that are just really, focusing on like, what in the heck am I going to do? I don't know how I can get my second graders to understand, to learn all the letter sounds, basic decoding stuff. And then same with the high school, I have some teachers that are looking at the students' reading ability and then trying to match that up with what they're requiring for writing assignments, developing a rubric specific to their writing ability, and even finding extra material that matches their writing or their reading capability. So I have a few that are able to.
So, Craig, you get a comment?
Well, I was just going to say, in Fraser, it took us 3 long, hard years to get to where he's at right now. It wasn't, we just didn't give them maps and boom, they have it. I mean, there was a lot of the PLC work and the MTSS meetings where we worked with Mr. Dakota. He did a lot, him and John both, on the structure of the MTSS meetings to really move our staff forward in that direction with data. Then they saw how important it was with the data, and it was just a matter of, we will do this, and so then they wanted to more.
And another part of that is student relevancy. How do you get them to take it, especially in the junior high and high school side? Like what starts to affect them, and then we start changing their schedule around and say, no, you need this class. They start losing electives. Then they start paying attention. Like, okay, this is really affecting me. We kind of lost that for a little ways. We had a science teacher who was kind of ahead of this, and he passed away and kind of took all that knowledge with it. I kind of stepped in and was just looking at all this, like, what the hell am I looking at?
But to answer, spin off of what Stevie was asking about your role as leaders, you basically said, this is what we're going to do. And you modeled that by providing them with the professional development that they needed and the tools that they needed to be successful with that. You're
So
struggling
we had to be really familiar with the program.
Yeah.
You have to know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
You can't just introduce something
Right.
and say go for it, and that's not going to work. So John got real familiar, I'm real familiar, and everybody that worked with it became familiar.
And another part of that was Jim kind of taking on the junior high and high school part. We had another elementary, we had a couple who were kind of really spearhead the conversations at their RTI meetings. And so those are really helpful. I mean, because as a one leader, it'd be difficult to do everything. Try to make it to this meeting, explain everything to them, go to the next one. Where that was awesome to have those guys. And Jim's meetings, I could just sit back and listen and kind of chime in when I needed.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have those people that
If you don't have those people, then it is hard.
Yeah,
You
it's-
know, start
But,
from
you know,
scratch.
yeah, and I think your comment, Jim, about you really knowing your stuff, I mean, that's huge, because if you go in there with even kind of the appearance that you kind of know what you're talking about, you're dead in the water. And I think that's with anything. It's obvious that the leaders that have shared thus far is you're committed to this process, you see value in it, therefore it's gonna work. Until you put those pieces together in it, that'll make it work.
So Jim and John, do you have teacher leaders now stepping forward and helping each other? Or
Yes, and that was a big part of this. He talked about the technology setbacks and people struggling with passwords and different things. Like this process, that was a big part. Like I couldn't be everywhere in the building, but I had a couple of teachers who were successful in their part who stepped in and said, okay, this is how we set up our sessions. This is what you got to do. Even to this is how you access your reports. And I'm so thankful for that because, like I said, because otherwise I would be, I'd be spread way too thin.
Yeah.
Or without that, I mean, I'm really appreciative of those people.
And I think you also have to, if I can step in, the teachers that are there, that have years and years of going to MAPS trainings at different places. Last year, we specifically told her that she would start helping, you know, more with the training, more with the getting, because she always wanted to go, but then none of it was coming back to the building, and she was completely closing her door and saying, you know, and so that, like the BLT and the MTSS meetings really helped.
Sure.
Making sure that we had that accountability, and I wasn't the only person telling her that she needed to do that. So
Also seeing some schools where at grade level meetings, the periodic results are really looked at in depth, and when they're talking to each other, then it's sort of like, oh, I have to really know what I'm talking about here. It's sort of like, okay, I'll be okay with the ownership of it because my peers are.
And a nice thing with with having access to this data so quickly, it really guides your RTI meetings and it kind of keeps you on task. I mean, it's too easy for a small group to become a grape session where this kind of keeps it focused. But I mean, there were times, you know, Jim and I had a meeting over the Christmas break, so it does take a little bit of extra commitment to make these things happen. We realigned our winter benchmark to fall right before the end of the semester, so we can work on that and then adjust the schedules for the second semester in the high school. And otherwise, we were losing relevancy, like I said, with those guys.
But I just really want to stress this point again, because if your teachers were pushing back or you weren't getting the response from them, like, okay, we're just going to wait you two out. You know, Korea's gone now, we're going to wait and see what's going to happen here. You know, are you going to continue to stay? You stayed vigilant with it. I mean, you're modeling for them the importance of, you know, it did take time over the winter time, but we had to get these kids rearranged, and so you're modeling for them, again, the importance of the whole initiative. So if it's done, I hate to use this word, but in a half-assed way, you're going to lose that commitment on their part.
Half-hearted.
Half-hearted, thank you. Thank you. That was much more professional. Thank you.
But I want to say that.
But you see, I guess, you know, because we're all about the leaders here, what you all are attempting to do and have been doing over the last 3 years is working. And it's because of your overall commitment and your push, you know, your modeling of implementing this tool with fidelity. John, you mentioned that earlier, and it's made all the difference in the world.
So let me come back to my point about this is a resource allocation, and we want the board to continue to see MAPS as a positive. How do you engage with them? What do you share with them?
Just whatever report I can get my hands on, I put it together in a term that they can understand. Actually, there's a lot on here that they can see. The biggest thing I would advise, though, is use student numbers, don't use student names.
Right.
And you can modify your reports to do that, but that's a big thing, you know, because you don't want them picking and choosing who they're looking at. Different,
Sure.
You know, anything I do, any of my attendance data, I use attendance numbers now because it takes away any potential favoritism. And like I said, just put it in terms that they understand, and the easiest way is percentiles.
Anybody else have ideas, thoughts on what you do with board? Do you share this information with your board?
Yeah, well, actually, we do ISIP, which is once a month. And then on top of that, we're doing MAPS. We used to administer MAPS 3 times a year. But now, with the testing and the amount of volumes that we have to keep of data, we've kind of refrained from that, and now we only offer one in the fall and one in the spring, or in the winter. That way in the spring, when it comes to the real deal, they're ready, and we kind of know, can prepare for that. Having said that, when you guys had talked about buy-in, one thing for Lodge Track Elementary for the staff there is the buy-in is allowing the staff to have ownership over it. Not only that, but you know, when there's a means at the end and you know what you want to accomplish, it's the steps of how to get there. And when you make your team and you make your school have that ownership, they take the initiative to be involved in the curriculum, to make sure student achievement is being, you know, adhered to. So there's a lot of little variables that come into play to accomplish that, you know, end goal of having student achievement. So that's something that we've been successful. But, you know, I've heard you guys talk about, you know, it's taken years. It has, you know, not only years, but developing the curriculum, utilizing the curriculum, and also teaching with fidelity is like the biggest thing.
So how long would you say you've been at it?
About 3 years. A minimum of any change you see, you have to give it at least 3
Yeah.
years. And it has to be consistent. And also having the short turnovers, you know, with staff, because new members come on, and then you have to, you know, get them up to date with everything else. So that's what we've used at our school.
I guess my last piece, and I'm really glad I got this report, I was struggling with the Wi-Fi. But if I was going to present to a parent, this would be the report that I give them. This is their growth or their progress report. And if you look, it has, this is our student Wyatt Miller, and it has their scores throughout his progress. It goes down to his 5th grade year on there on the right. The blue is what his RIT score is. The orange is the district or grade level. You know, so it's comparing it to the rest of the district, so you see he's above the district, and then he's barely above the mean, the national mean. You know, so that kind of gives it some comparison. And if I was going to, you know, so this kind of helps you set your goals. Like I said, this kind of makes it clear to the parent, like where are we going here, you know, what's been going on, the detailed picture, what we're looking for down the road. What I don't get, and I was talking to Jim, sometimes with us being a small school, sometimes the small population size affects some of our data, and I don't know why it does some reports and not others. Like right here, I don't know why there isn't a district report. I don't know if it's because the window's not closed or what. Because with this, the windows roll into each other instead of it being a set date that you set up. This window stays open until it rolls into the winter.
So, Darren, Clyde was just talking about 3 years. You're new to the district. What have you observed? What's happened prior to your arrival to allow you to come in and kind of carry the ball and go with it?
I think one of the things that our district's been really got strong in is it's a community-based idea of academic performance. They're very strong academically. I'd say the downfall is that we're a very conservative community, and changing from, you know, old school teaching into more technological stuff is something that's going to be our process, is starting to use more technology as far as kids go. So, you know, using stuff like MAP is pretty well established. That type of stuff is very strong in the district. But now it's taking some of that, the type of learning that we're doing, and applying it to stuff like using Google Docs in classrooms and using more technology and teaching our kids how to be, when they step on a college campus, be able to turn in a paper.
Right.
They write great papers, but when they go to school, they don't know how to turn them in.
Right.
And trying to introduce and doing board reports with different things to get our board involved first, and technology communities, teachers involved, and then trying to get everybody aboard to move forward.
So when you talk about them, you know, just the investment in education, maybe Fraser can talk about, Corinne, John, and Jim, what you've done over the 3 years to make the information you're sharing with parents meaningful. Like, I'm not saying that maybe the education wasn't valued the way maybe we want it to be, but you've obviously made significant gains there. Like, do parents now in Fraser look for these reports or in Lodge Girls? Are you kind of setting that tone?
I say in terms of Infinite Campus, I'm getting more and more interested in our portal, where that's where they can get in and see their kids.
Right.
how they're doing in class. And see, that's been a big push for me this year. See, before we would just send out progress reports with just grades. At first, I tried to do it so every teacher gave me a student summary, which is a breakdown of every assignment, but then our office personnel struggled with getting all that paperwork dispersed in a timely manner. So now we only do the student summaries for D's and F's, so then you can see specifically what's going on. Why is this grade where it's at? And the portal kind of puts that information in there. Okay, what homework do they have? What has their grade been in these previous assignments? Just a more in-depth look.
So are you saying you are getting greater investment?
We are now. Last year I probably had about 3 or 4 parents who signed up for it. But now that, I'm really fighting to make sure that we get our progress reports out. Parents will always say, we're not getting these things. So now it's a big push. I put it, I put the deadline down for the teacher on Wednesday, Friday they're going out. And that's not negotiable to me. We make that happen. Because then the parents can't say, well, why am I just receiving this report card now? Well, you've gotten this, and so we're attempting to make this stuff accessible, but still there are the parents who take it and look at it, and there's others who probably just throw it in the trash and never even check it. And that's, I don't know how to conquer that battle, but like I said, just the different ways to get the information there. Working on our school website, getting the information a little bit more and more updated. Actually updating the site itself is coming up, and our school sign on site, kind of let them know what's going on.
I see that as an integral part of the puzzle. Do you have some things, Sam, that you're doing or Lodgegrass is doing to get that investment from our parents to, here's where I'm coming from as a parent. As a non-educator, I would think that would be fairly overwhelming. Your point about taking the RIT score out of it and doing it a percentage, the likelihood of a non-educator is greater, that they're going to be able to understand that. But and that's great that they're starting to get into Infinite Campus, but are you doing anything intentionally to get those parents more engaged in this process?
Making reasons for them to be in the school is really what I'm doing. I switched our Thanksgiving dinner to the evening time, and then trying to have a parent meeting. It's just offering these chances. I offered the My Voice parent survey during the parent-teacher conferences. I had 22 participants. So I'm pretty, with our small size, I'm pretty happy with that. Just finding reasons. I want to put together like a turkey bingo, different things to try to, accommodate to their time. Our Christmas dinner.
Get the turkey, so.
Yeah, actually, he wants to get wild turkeys from the Hooterites and just give him a wild turkey.
Figure it out.
Yeah, but I don't know. But it's just, just little modifications that we have that are already built in.
But it sounds
to
like
take
you
advantage
intentionalized it.
Yeah.
And I think
like I said, so moving, because usually we have our Thanksgiving dinner during the day, and only the parents who don't work are able to make it in.
Right.
Where this, I'm, just looking at your things and thinking, how can I get more people here? Well, what's one of the biggest hindrances? Well, the parents at work. That's just kind of my thought process on it. It's just giving the opportunity. I don't know if anybody's going to show up.
Right.
Our first one in the fall, I probably got like 5 parents.
Right.
But I was a bit happier with the My Voice survey that I got more in there. I kind of tricked them, but
Whatever it takes.
yeah.
So I
I always
can
found that visual effects, this is visual, they can see
Yeah.
it, but if you throw numbers at our parents, we just lose it.
And I think one thing we really need to remember too is and something I dealt with in Langdale, were the teachers.
Yeah.
They set the tone
Yeah.
in their classrooms, they set the tone in those hallways, they set the tone on how much dissemination of information they're giving their kids.
Right.
And I think that it needs to be set in whatever they're teaching during that day, that either this or whatever you're using becomes a part of their culture in that classroom.
And their routine?
But yeah,
See,
because
that's-
that's the pieces. You can get the parents in,
Yeah.
but you have teachers that are unwilling to do anything or go above and beyond. You're not going to get, you're going to be doing it by yourself
Right.
with no help at all.
But that's what I guess I heard you saying, and Claudia alluded to it as well, and Karina, when you talk about 3 years in that investment, you've always got the new staff coming in, but if Claudia is treating it like, this is how we do business around here.
Mhm.
If you're going to be a professional at Lodgegrass Elementary School, this is how we drive our instruction, and we do it based on this data and this information.
Right, and even my second year in Lane Deer, speaking of Infinite Campus and grades, I still had teachers that weren't getting their grades in. Even the days that we were printing report cards, that I had to write letters
Yeah.
because it's you know, it's a constant struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm going to go out on a limb here and have you guys, I'm going to give an idea here after, I'm going to steal your computer to use it for the, in focus for a second, but you know, just the ideas that you've surfaced, like you tricking them or whatever, I think it would be great if we could capture all of those ideas and share them. Because I'm sure you tried some things, I'm sure you try some things, Sam tries it, you all try things to get greater buy-in. So, you know, when I was asking about what did you intentionally do and you're getting more and more interested in Infant Campus, you're doing something. So what is it we would be able to steal from you to get that to happen for us, is my point.
Has to be the staff. The
Yeah.
staff is trained on it every year, we train the staff.
Yeah, and I've done professional development on this, like I've required them to come in after school and show them, and if they're not getting it, I make sure that they're paying attention, you know, because I don't like that. I don't like showing somebody an elaborate, you know, system or Infinite Campus and see that they're, you know, I have a couple like to joke around, like, hey, you know, I want you to pay attention to this. I make sure that they show me that they can do it, you know, and I don't want to talk down to anybody, but I mean, it's important. You don't want to have, you know, report cards supposed to go out, and these guys have no clue how to post a grade.
Is he doing that now?
Yeah. Well, now it's a whole new batch. It's a whole batch. But we did really good with our last report cards. I mean, they bring me printed grades. I say, okay, now let's enter these on Infinite Campus. You just hand it right back.
All right, so John, so a teacher can pull his or her grade level and look at this to drive instruction, what my students know and they didn't capture from my pearls of wisdom, whatever. So they can look at that to drive instruction. A parent can look across and see how Jane or Johnny's doing and compared to the district.
The rest of the district, the nation.
And the national average, right? Okay, so how does this help your board members understand about data? What do they see in growth or lack of across the district that helps them say, yeah, we want to support you in math, we want to teach you
Well,
to do
it's
math.
tough to say, okay, I got a student with straight A's, and you take this and you compare it to the national data, and your kid's way below.
Right,
That means we need to up what we're doing in the school.
right.
You know, it kind of lets them know, it reassures them that what we're doing is in line with the rest of the nation.
Okay.
You know, or how, I guess the orange one's more for individual means, you know, and that's kind of reassuring to the parent. You know, sometimes that the national data can seem really daunting, like this giant task. Like, they don't want to be compared to the rest of the nation because they perceive us as behind, but in reality, I mean, we're there. I mean, so, but the district, it seems to be more relevant to the actual parents.
Okay. And so you can also roll up the entire district's data and say that our district can compare to.
Yep. And Jim actually, he dispersed that information in an email. I don't know if I can get access to
It
it.
was a different report.
But yeah, and
You
he
can
so he
check
got
with
that
him.
out. And so you can look at it as individuals, you can look at it as a specific grade, you can look at it as a high school. I don't think you can do one district. I haven't done that. And I don't really see why I want to do one giant district, but I do the high school, junior high, and
Break it up into
elementary, because I've done growth reports for Karina, and she's actually used for the state. You know,
So the other district, Sam left. Okay, the restroom, so maybe we'll take him. But so, okay, you're busy administrators. How do you find time to do this, or do you have help doing this? And how do you're talking about running reports, you're talking about analyzing, you know, sending things out to parents. How do you do that? Darren, how do you do that? I mean, you've got a zillion other things. Do you have a data person? Title I person?
We have a Title I person, a couple principals, and myself, and both of our office staffs are really good about it, dispersing information.
Okay.
And, you know, we kind of do it as a team effort back and forth.
So everybody's trained.
Yep.
How about your school?
Well, we all know being in the rural area of Montana and having a low enrollment, you have to wear many hats,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah.
Even with subbing in the classroom on given days.
Right.
But it's all time management. And a lot of times we go back to our leadership team. And then we have PIR Fridays. So that allows us to give us an hour and a half or so to look at the data and analyze it from there and then be more effective in our decision making for, you know. the
So you
future.
bring that to every Friday meeting?
Just about. We kind of have a lot of different things we tackle, like we have the MBI stuff, the continuous school improvement. So there's a lot of different things, but once in a while we'll throw in the data.
So that's great.
Right.
That's great.
As a trustee, Claudia made a report on elementary level. Was that MAPS testing?
That was ISIT.
ISIT?
ISIT, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because what we see as the, when she got it before the trustees, in the grade levels, we did see that maybe I'd say majority from, what was it, first through sixth, right? And so majority, it stayed the same. Maybe 2 classes went up just, a few percent, but the others declined. And we've seen that when I asked her to pull up the report. So every month we're gonna, she'll bring the report, the data report, to see if this is helping our students. This program that, they're using.
And another thing I'd like to include in that is, when you look at the data, you have to speculate or kind of make an educated guess on what could it be, Because when we ended the school year, with 170, 165 students. When we tested them this time, we have almost 200 students. So are those pocket holes like a cheese, with these kids looking at the pocket holes of, are these kids who are now coming into our districts the one that's scoring low and skewing the percentage overall? Or could it be that, more kids didn't retain the information over the summer? Or could it be, so there's a lot of different variables that come into play. So as time goes on, we're going to have to eliminate, the process of elimination actually is what it's going to end up.
Well, and I think those are all great questions dealing with data, because, and it's never constant for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's my burning question. So you have all this now, and your teachers are using it, and they see the value in it. So what are you seeing instructionally in your classrooms? How do you see this being used in a daily basis in your school?
This really comes back to our intervention pieces. And because like I said, you could have a class of 20 and have just a wide range, and it's really difficult to try to address the specific issues. And that's what Jim and I are approaching is, okay, how do we address these? How can we provide support? Like looking at the Ed Ready and just looking at the specific pieces that the student's missing, because that may be too difficult of a thing for one teacher to do. Yeah, you can differentiate your instruction, but when you have a gifted and talented kid with a kid who's probably a 2 or 3 intervention all in the same room, that's a wide range to try to cover.
So are you?
I guess our one last piece that we're really looking at is bringing back into CRIS strategies, that can kind of feed into these different learning styles. And that we actually, our new school improvement coach, Marilyn Cease, she was actually my CRIS trainer, and so she's actually getting into the classroom and providing these strategies to teachers, like we've kind of specified our social studies teacher. He's struggling in the junior high, kind of has been continuously. And so that's what we're looking at is, okay, let's get this guy different approaches than just the lecture model.
But see, you hit the nail on the head to me, because we can have all this wonderful, timely information, but if your teachers are not doing anything different instructionally, it's for naught. It's going to sit in the computer. So if you've gotten to the point, and so my follow-up question is, how do you think you've gotten to that point, to where teachers are even talking about, well, I've got 20 kids, but I realize Ed Ready's going to work for 5 of these kids. Or, maybe we need to look at our grouping practices and our school day schedule.
And we did that.
See? So that's the kind of thing, in other words, that you're translating, in my mind, you're translating the message again. We're driving our instruction through the information we know about each and every kid. And as leaders now, I'm following up with you to say, how did you use this information? How can I, as a leader, see evidence of this in your daily classroom practice? And if I'm not seeing evidence of it, then we've got a total disconnect. And truly, don't be offended by this. We talk about this at length here, and I think the teachers mean well, but they can't make that connection. They have the data here, but they can't translate it into practice. And differentiation instruction seems so overwhelming. But I know that's been a struggle. Differentiated instruction, they've had countless PD trainings, but yet to get that transference into style of teaching and mode is so hard.
The growth stuff, like the big changes, are actually easier. It's like the gross motor movement. are easier. Where the fine motor stuff, that's the instruction, that's the difficult piece. That really is, like I said, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's the big question. You know, and as for individual schools struggling with MAPS data, it's not this reservation school. I did advanced accreditation at Glenmac, and those guys do want nothing to do with their MAPS data. They shun it. The older teachers just push it away.
Sure they do.
They had a young English teacher who wanted to work with it, but they kind of ostracized her for it. I mean, they were like,
Well, especially your veteran teachers, they're afraid of it. They weren't trained this way. And now they've got you
Because
all
they
coming
don't.
in and saying, we're gonna do business differently here. So that's back to my point again about buy-in, and you sell your new teachers when they come in and just simply say, this is how we do this at Lodge Grass Elementary School, or you're probably finding that at Harvard Youth now.
Actually, the teachers, I'm not fighting the buy-in with the teachers. They want change.
Yeah.
You know, we did the star reading and star math, and I had her disaggregate it down so that they could see the growth, or, you know, kind of like John did last year. And then we had a meeting with all the teachers after we showed the video about Brockton and everything.
Yeah.
And they want to change. So they were told, but they could wait until January, and they said no. So with the data, they saw how